Hi everyone, this is Miss Larissa from Woodrow Explorers. I'm your mystery reader for this week, and today's 3 through 5 book is going to be a book called Goliath, Hero of the Great Baltimore Fire by Claudia Friedel. On a cold February morning in 1904, a restless fire horse stomped and snorted in his Baltimore, Maryland stall. While the other horses calmly munched hay along the firehouse walls, Goliath twitched from ear to tail. "Who's got a beast like you riled this mornin'?" The hostler, Mark Hill, asked the dapple gray giant. Whoosh! The wind pushed Captain Cowell through the door of Engine Company 15. "It's a nasty mornin' out there, Hill. Don't expect to see many kids stoppin' by after church to feed the horses." Hill lifted Goliath's legs, one at a time, checking his feet for a stray nail or a piece of glass. His hands looked like a child's next to Goliath's oversized horseshoes. "Something's bothering Goliath, Captain. He can't seem to stand this still this morning." Standing still. That was something every fire horse was trained to do. They stood still in their narrow stalls day and night, ready and waiting for the sound of the fire alarm. They stood still while buildings collapsed around them, while intense heat blistered their skin, and while flames sent others running for safety. They stood still, unhitched from their rigs at the scene of a fire, waiting patiently to be returned to the firehouse. Goliath never had any trouble standing still before. Just like his Percheron ancestors who carried knights into battle, Goliath was massive in size, mighty in strength, and steadfast in the face of danger. His company men called Goliath the ultimate fire horse. Captain Call passed Goliath's stall on his way upstairs. "Last night was slow. He just needs to get out and stretch his legs. Take him for an exercise run this afternoon if things stay quiet," he called to Hill. It appeared to be a quiet Sunday inside Engine Company 15. The horses were groomed, the brass was polished, the oiled harnesses hung from the ceiling, and the company firefighters were upstairs getting into full-dress uniforms. Everything was set for weekly inspection, except Goliath. The 1-ton stallion strained his massive chest against the chain in front of his stall and slammed his twitching nostrils into Hill's shoulder. "You smell something outside, don't you?" Hill said as he looked out the window. 2 boys ran down Lombard Street, chasing after a runaway cap. A woman's feathered hat flew off while her skirt wrapped around her high-buttoned boots. "Let's hope it's not a fire, big fella. That wind has a mind of its own today." Captain Call stopped at the top of the spiral stairway and called down to Hill. "Only a few minutes until inspection. Do what you can to calm Goliath. We don't want him spooking the other horses." Hill had almost made it to Goliath when... Bam! Goliath slammed his foot into the back of the stall. Before Hill could reach him, the house alarm sounded throughout the station. It rang out the numbers of the 854 alarm box on the John E. Hurst and Company building on German Street. "Turn out, men," the captain shouted. In a split second, the entire company was running. Firemen slid down brass poles. The chains dropped in front of the stalls, and number 15's fire horses rushed to their rigs and backed into position. Goliath bolted to his lead position on the Hale water tower. The spider dropped hanging harnesses from the ceiling onto horses' backs. Buckle snap. The horses were ready to go. The captain hollered to his men. "It's only a thermostat alarm. Something's just overheated. I'll run ahead." Hill shouted. "It's a fire, all right." Goliath smelled it. In less than 20 seconds, the first teams raced to the steam engine and hose wagon out the double doors and up Liberty Street. Goliath bobbed his head impatiently as he waited for the second alarm to signal his rig. Goliath and his team were assigned the task of transporting the Hale water tower. It would have taken 60 men to pull this 5-ton, 65-foot extension that blasted water into skyscraper windows. "Hold your horses there, Goliath," chuckled the driver, Eugene Short, as he climbed onto the rig. Just as Short strapped himself into his seat, the sound that Goliath craved rang through the station. The second alarm sent Goliath and his team flying over the stone streets. In less than a minute, Short had parked the rig at the entrance of the Hearst building, a 6-story brick warehouse stocked full of dry and cotton goods. Smoke poured from the windows above as Short raced to free the horses from the rig and move them to safety. Goliath stood perfectly still next to the curb while Short unhitched his partners. Just as he reached over to unhitch Goliath's trace, an explosion of black smoke blew the roof off the Hearst building, shattering all the windows. A piercing sound whistled from the smoking building as tongue-like flames lashed out of the entrance, scorching Goliath from neck to flank. But despite his injuries, Goliath stood still, obediently waiting for a command. Bricks began to fall. The building was going to collapse. But the rig, blocked from moving forward, looked too long to turn around in the narrow street. A crowd began to gather. Someone yelled, "They're trapped! They'll never make it out!" Short snapped his reins and shouted to Goliath, the only horse still hitched to the rig. "Come on, champ, you can do it. Give it everything you've got." Goliath strained his massive chest and dragged the rig around, but the front scraped against a watering trough. "It's too tight. They'll never make it," someone shouted. They inched forward, only to lodge the back of the rig into a telephone pole. "They're stuck." At the crack of Short's reins, Goliath lunged forward with all his strength. Without a second to spare, the rig finally broke free. Just as they cleared the turn, the Hearst building collapsed. Bricks rained down, burying a nearby steam engine and the ladder truck. Short, unaware of his own burns, buried his head in Goliath's mane. "You saved us, champ. If I hadn't been there myself, I never would have believed it." He checked Goliath's blistered neck and flank. "You got the worst of it, that's sure." Goliath didn't flinch. "Come on, big fella. You need some tending to. Straight away." The thunderous explosion of the Hearst building shook the entire city. Within seconds, firebrands flew into the surrounding buildings. Flames leapt from window to window and rooftop to rooftop, spreading like an urban forest fire. Frightened and confused, people poured out onto Baltimore streets, many getting in the way of the firefighters. As the flames continued to spread throughout the city, fire companies from Washington to New York rushed to Baltimore. Train cars delivered additional men and equipment. Hundreds of policemen, soldiers, and citizens joined forces to battle the blazes. Boom! Blast! Boom! Demolition crews set off dynamite to block the spreading fire, but the explosions set new buildings ablaze instead. The windswept flames funneled through the narrow streets, alighting wooden buildings like matchsticks. Firefighters battled late into the night under the glowing orange sky. The inferno continued into morning, and the fickle winds shifted again and again. It seemed that nothing could catch the fleeting flames. It wasn't until late Monday afternoon when firefighters, fire rigs, and fireboats lined the Jones Falls stream to make a last stand. A wall of water blasts, pumped from the stream, finally halted the spread of the raging fire. Engine Company 15 continued to extinguish isolated fires among the ruins. Finally, 2 days after their missed inspection, the exhausted men returned to their station. They had served longer than any company, 55 straight hours. The men collapsed on their bunks, and the horses, all except one, settled in their stalls. "How's Goliath? Is he going to make it? Can they save him?" Hill shook his head. "The doc says it's too soon to know. Burns that are bad are tricky to heal. Any ordinary horse wouldn't have survived the explosion, but everyone knows there's nothing ordinary about Goliath." Over the next several months, children visited Engine Company 15 hoping to see Goliath. Finally, 6 months after the Great Fire, Hill led Goliath, scarred but strong, back to the station house. As Hill guided Goliath back into his stall, the company men gathered round him. Eugene Short smoothed Goliath's mane above his scarred neck. "Welcome home, champ." Just as Hill reached up to remove his bridle, Goliath stomped and snorted, and his nostrils began to twitch. Gong! The house alarm ran through the station. The captain shouted, "Turn out, men!" And once again, Goliath and Engine Company 15 were off and running. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys learned a little bit about bravery. Thanks for watching.